Good morning. I'm here at Petra in Jordan. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and definitely one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. So this building behind me is called the Treasury, but it's funny because it never really had any treasure in it. It was built by a people called the Nabataeans. And even though they built some of the most famous buildings in the world, we actually don't know very much about them. What we do know is that their capital was in a city called Palmyra, or Palmyra, which today is in Syria. And this was another one of their smaller, minor capitals, although it doesn't look very minor to me. The Nabataeans existed at the same time as the Roman Empire, and they really connected the Romans with the Persians, and you can see really interesting mixes of Roman and Persian art and architecture in their cities. Most of what we know comes from what was written down by the Romans and the Persians. And today, even though we still don't know very much about Nabataean culture, we can definitely enjoy the beautiful buildings they've left behind.
Here is a much older carving made by the Nabataeans. You can see that it resembles the treasury, but is much simpler. These large blocks are also indicative of older Nabataean design. The soft sandstone of this region allowed the Nabataeans a great deal of freedom in their architectural expression.
Let's take a close look at this building. You can see upwards that there is a urn up there. And if you look very carefully, you could see that it has a lot of damage on it. That's because that for hundreds of years there was a legend that the Nabataeans left a large amount of gold inside. And so after the invention of guns, people would often shoot it to try to break it and get the treasure inside. Unfortunately, all they did was damage the building.
Do you see those grooves on the sides? Modern archaeologists and workers use them as a ladder to get to the top of the structure. It looks a little too scary for me.
Hey guys, still here at Petra. If you look behind me, you'll see what are called the tombs of the nobles. Now, very interesting, we do know that they're tombs, but we don't really know who was buried there or why. Calling them the tombs of the nobles is just because it sounds nice, and because tombs this nice were probably built by important people. But we really don't know. It's just one of the many mysteries that the Nabataeans left behind them. Their culture was very old. Some people think that it started 5,000 years ago, although historians agree that it probably started more like 2,400 years ago. They were independent for a very long time and made a lot of money facilitating trade between the Greeks and later the Romans with the Persians. Eventually, they would become part of the Roman Empire, and even this would become part of a Roman province. Unfortunately, very little of their culture survived in the Roman Empire, which is why we know so little about them today.
The site also has ruins left behind by the Romans, such as columns, mosaic art, telltale Roman roads, and, of course, an amphitheater. No matter how small, no Roman town was complete without an amphitheater.
So, whatever happened to the Nabataeans? After they built incredible things like this structure behind me, where'd they go? Well, we don't really know. What we do know is that people were living here even after the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. And this site, Petra, continued to be part of the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire. And we can even see some ruins of Greek language churches here today. But in the 6th century, that would be in the 500s, there were two really bad earthquakes, and after that, it seems like no one lived here. Now, people still lived in the surrounding area, and people still sort of knew about these places, but it wasn't until the 19th century that the outside world discovered them again. Now, this building behind me is called the monastery, and it might be because a few Christian monks lived here, but the other story is that it's just very far away from everything else, much like a monastery. So many mysteries left behind by the Nabataeans.
And I know what you're going to ask. Can you go inside? Well, the treasury and monastery are off limits, but yes, you can go inside some of the structures. However, the insides are very plain. All the beauty, in this case, is on the outside.